Hello and welcome to this first lesson on the B8 topic. In this topic of work we're going to be looking specifically at photosynthesis, and today we're going to have a look around the basics and some tests that you can do on plants to check if the processes of photosynthesis could be happening. So today's title, I would like you to write in your books as you would do for any other lesson, explaining photosynthesis. By the end of the lesson you should be able to recall the word and symbol equations for photosynthesis. You should be able to describe how plants get the raw materials they need to carry out photosynthesis, and you should be able to explain how to carry out some experiments to show if leaves contain starch and if they are carrying out gas exchange. So today's keyword, or the main keyword of this topic, is the word photosynthesis. Photosynthesis. And we can break photosynthesis down into some different words. The word photo means light. Okay? The word photo means light. And the word synthesis, if you synthesize something, you're making it. So, to make. Now, in the terms of photosynthesis, we're using light to make glucose. Okay? So we can write our definition for photosynthesis as a process used by plants where light energy is converted into carbohydrates a process used by plants where light energy is converted into carbohydrates by or with use of chlorophyll. I hope you can spell chlorophyll. Okay, so photosynthesis is a process used by plants where light energy is converted into carbohydrates with use of chlorophyll. Essentially, photosynthesis converts light energy into chemical energy. So that's our link with physics. So it converts a light energy store into a chemical energy store. Now, just to link this with topics we're going to cover when you're in Year 11, organisms that carry out photosynthesis are often named producers. They produce their own energy, okay? They don't have to eat anything to get energy. So just so we can preempt what you're going to cover in Year 11, I'm going to put it in red because it's very important. We can just say that organisms that carry out, and I'm going to sneeze, bless me, organisms that carry out photosynthesis are called producers, and we'll cover that in more detail when we do it in Year 11. So before we move on to the equations, I'm going to look at the second learning objective first. Okay, we're going to have a look at how a plant absorbs the substances it needs. Okay, and this is an image that is on the PowerPoint. So rather than looking at this one first, we're going to look at this one. Can you describe how plants get the raw materials they need to carry out photosynthesis? So on this diagram, I've just photocopied this out of a textbook that I use. We've got a picture of some long grass, and it's showing where substances enter and exit the leaf. Okay? So we can start by saying that water and mineral ions are absorbed in the root of the plant, and transported through the xylem, which we covered in B4. So, and transported through the xylem. Now remember, I'm just going to put in brackets here. When it's transported through the xylem, this is known as a transpiration stream. Okay, we have covered this in B4. So this is a transpiration stream. Okay. Sunlight hits the top of a leaf. And we said when we looked at B4 that we have these palisade cells at the top of a leaf which contain chlorophyll to carry out photosynthesis. We also have this waxy layer on top of the leaf which allows sunlight to penetrate. So we can say that sunlight hits the top of leaves. Okay, so we've got our sunlight hitting the top of leaves, and we've got our water and mineral ions being absorbed from the soil in the roots. Gases such as carbon dioxide and oxygen diffuse in and out of the leaf through diffusion through the stomata. So the final thing we can write on this slide before we move on, we can say that gases diffuse, or we can put gases in brackets, e.g. oxygen and carbon dioxide, we can say gases diffuse in and out of leaves through the stomata. Through stomata. Okay? So this is all revision from B4 really, but essentially we get water being absorbed by the roots, transported through the plant through the xylem to the leaf. So this water has to go to the leaf. The gases, carbon dioxide, come from the air and diffuse into the leaf through the stomata. Oxygen diffuses out, and sunlight hits the top of the leaf where photosynthesis can take place. So if we refresh our screen, please remember you can refresh, or not just refresh, sorry, you can pause the video whenever you like. So let's put the subheading. Word equation. Word equation for photosynthesis. Dot dot, okay? So the word equation for photosynthesis. We've got, in fact I'm going to use a orangey colour I think. We've got carbon dioxide, being added to water. And I am using specific colours here, you'll see why in a moment. So we have carbon dioxide being added to water if in the correct conditions, which include chlorophyll, and light, will produce the products glucose, and oxygen. Okay. Now the reason I've done these in a specific colour is because the orange ones are the reactants and the blue ones are the products. So these are our reactants. I should have left myself some space. Reactants. And the blue ones over here are our products. So carbon dioxide, when added to water in the presence of chlorophyll and light, will make glucose and oxygen. Now, reactants are needed for photosynthesis to take place. And these reactants, from what we said on the previous slide, come from the following areas. So I need a different colour I can use. So we can say that carbon dioxide enters the leaf from the air via diffusion through the stomata. As we said on the previous slide. So carbon dioxide enters the leaf from the air via diffusion through the stomata. If you think back to this diagram we used, I'll just put it down in the bottom corner. It is on the PowerPoint, so you can use it. We said that carbon dioxide from the air enters the leaf through diffusion. Okay? Water gets to the leaf, which as it's absorbed from the soil via the roots and then transported to the leaf through the xylem. So we can say that water is absorbed from the soil by the roots and transported from the leaf, to the leaf via the xylem. Okay, so carbon dioxide enters the leaf from the air via diffusion. Water is absorbed from the soil in the roots, transported through the xylem to the leaf, where it is added to carbon dioxide with use of light energy via the chlorophyll to make glucose and oxygen. Oxygen is a waste product. So, is a waste product of photosynthesis so is let out of the leaf by diffusion into the atmosphere. Okay, so we've got carbon dioxide being added to water. The carbon dioxide comes from the atmosphere. It moves into the leaf via diffusion. Water is absorbed from the roots in the soil, transported to the leaf via the xylem. The chlorophyll then uses water and carbon dioxide, using light energy to convert it into glucose and oxygen. Oxygen is a waste product that is released into the atmosphere. Glucose, on the other hand, has lots of uses, okay, which we're going to talk about in another lesson. So we can just put has lots of the uses. Lots of uses, such as energy, and is stored as starch. So we're going to talk about that in a moment. Is stored as starch. So one way that glucose is used in the plant is it can be used as starch. Now, if we look back at our learning objectives, it says that you need to know the word and symbol equations for photosynthesis. And I'm going to try and use the same colour coordination. So the symbol equation for photosynthesis, so we can just put symbol equation for photosynthesis we can put carbon dioxide, which is CO2. We can put water, which is H2O. We've then got our arrows. I'm going to leave some space because we're going to balance this in a moment. We've got our arrows. Light does not have a symbol formula, or you don't need to know it for now, so we can just write light on it. Chlorophyll, again, you don't need to know the symbol, so chlorophyll. I'm sure it does have one, but we're not going to talk about it. Glucose, which is a bit more of a difficult one, but all you need to do, remember for this, is multiples of 6. We've got C6, H12, O6. Make sure that you put the numbers as lowercase. They should be subscript because they represent 6 carbons, 12 hydrogens, 6 oxygens. If you are going to do A-level biology, which I hope a lot of you are considering doing, we talk about why it's C6H12O6. You don't need to know that for now. And oxygen is O2, not the phone company, but 2 oxygen atoms joined together. It is diatomic, as I'm sure your chemistry teachers are talking to you about. So that is our symbol equation. It is not balanced. In chemistry, you've probably been asked about balancing equations, and if I asked you to balance this equation, you would sit there for, some of you would do it instantly, some of you would sit there for about 5 million years trying to do it. So the quickest way to balance this equation is remember multiples of 6. So you put a 6 in front of the carbon dioxide, a 6 in front of the water, and a 6 in front of oxygen. That is now balanced. So if we have a look back at our learning objectives, it says, can you recall the word and symbol equations for photosynthesis? The word equation is carbon dioxide plus water in the presence of light and chlorophyll makes glucose and oxygen. Can I point out this must be an arrow? Do not put an equal sign. An equal sign is wrong. The carbon dioxide for this, which is a reactant, comes from the atmosphere and enters the leaf via diffusion through the stomata. Water is another reactant. It's absorbed from the soil by the roots and transported to the leaf via the xylem. Once carbon dioxide and water are in the leaf, the chlorophyll can use those reactants with energy from light to make glucose and oxygen. Glucose has lots of uses, which we're going to talk about next lesson. However, for now, I just want you to know that they can be used as energy and can be stored in an energy source known as starch. And oxygen is a waste product that is released into the atmosphere that we then use for respiration, and plants use for respiration at night time. The symbol equation for photosynthesis, the reactants are carbon dioxide, CO2, and water, H2O. In the presence of light and chlorophyll, will make glucose, C6H12O6, and oxygen O2. To balance that equation, you put a 6 in front of the two reactants and a 6 in front of the oxygen. So you should now be able to tell me the word and symbol equations for photosynthesis. You should be able to describe how plants get the raw materials they need to carry out photosynthesis. Carbon dioxide comes from the air and moves into the leaf by diffusion through the stomata, while water enters the roots via osmosis and is transported to the leaf through the xylem. Our final one is we need to look at these. How can we see if a leaf contains starch, and how can we see if gas exchange is taking place in a leaf? So these are our final two ideas that we're going to cover today. Please put the subheading in your book: testing leaves for starch. Now, this was a question on the first GCSE paper of the new specification, and it really caught us off guard. I never really considered that they would ask you this, but it seems to be an examiner's favourite, so we're going to discuss it. Okay, this diagram is on the PowerPoint. It does give you the steps on how you can test a leaf for starch. Okay, so starch is a storage of carbohydrates in plants. So starch is a storage molecule, of carbohydrates in plants. Now, we said from our photosynthesis equation that carbohydrates are made in photosynthesis. Photo means light, synthesis means to make, using light to make carbohydrates or glucose. Glucose is then stored as starch. So we can add underneath here by saying that photosynthesis makes carbohydrates that are stored as starch. Okay? Therefore, we can say from this that if a leaf contains starch, then it has been carrying out photosynthesis. It has to do photosynthesis to get the starch. So we can say that if, I'm going to write it here, if a leaf contains starch, comma, it must be carrying out photosynthesis. Am I going to fit it on? Okay. So if a leaf contains starch, it must be carrying out photosynthesis. So if we want to know if a plant has been doing photosynthesis, we can test it for starch. To do that, we put a leaf in boiling water to soften it. We then put the leaf into methylated spirits or ethanol. So we can put here ethanol. We can then add some drops of iodine to the leaf once we've put it in the ethanol, and then if it goes blue or black, it indicates that starch is present. Remember, we tested for starch in food tests back in B3. So we put the leaf in boiling water to soften it. We put the leaf in ethanol to remove the chlorophyll. The reason we do this is because it makes the leaf white, which is easier to see if it turns black. So I'm going to add there, in fact we'll use this colour, that this turns the leaf white. To see better, the iodine test. And I am trying to fit this on here. So it's for number 2. We then add some drops of iodine. If it turns black, that indicates that starch is present. What I would like you to do, because I'm not writing it out again, I would like you to pause the video at this point, and I would like you to write out these steps for testing for the presence of starch. Make sure that you add that the ethanol turns the leaf white. Okay, that's important so that you can see clearly whether it goes black or not. Pause the video now, write out those 4 steps, please. Okay, so you should have used the video and the diagram on the board to write out these steps. There is one really important point I want to add to this, and it's this step, step number 2. Okay, this was the exam question that come up, and it seems to be quite popular, but we never really discuss it other than at this point. Ethanol is highly flammable. Therefore, when you are testing a leaf for starch, you do not have a naked flame near the ethanol. If you have a naked flame near the ethanol, it will catch fire. So the point I'm trying to make here, and I'm going to put a star because it refers to step 2, we can say that ethanol is highly flammable and therefore should not be used next to naked flames or next to flames. It will catch fire, and that was the exam question. It was saying, why shouldn't the student carry out a starch test next to a lit Bunsen burner? Okay, it is because the ethanol is highly flammable and it could catch fire. So starch is a storage molecule of carbohydrates in plants. Starch is made through photosynthesis. Therefore, if we wanted to see if a plant has been doing photosynthesis, we can test its leaf for starch. We can put the leaf in boiling water to soften it. We can soak it in hot ethanol to remove the chlorophyll to make the leaf white so that we can see the iodine test better. We then add a couple of drops of iodine. If the leaf turns black, starch is in the leaf and therefore it has been doing photosynthesis. Ethanol is highly flammable, therefore you should not use it next to naked flames. So our final bit today, we need to talk about how we can test to see if leaves are carrying out gas exchange. So put the title, How to Test Leaves for Gas Exchange. Okay. We've said that leaves take in carbon dioxide and they give out oxygen. That is gas exchange. So we can start by saying, I'm going to put it in red, that leaves take in carbon dioxide for photosynthesis and release the waste product oxygen in a process called gas exchange. Now, gas exchange is something that we covered both in B1 and B4. Okay, so if you can't remember about those, have a look back at your notes from those topics. Okay, so leaves take in carbon dioxide for photosynthesis and release the waste product, oxygen, in a process called gas exchange. If there is no gas exchange, photosynthesis has not taken place. So, no gas exchange equals no photosynthesis. And this is where we can use the following setup, and the final image of the PowerPoint I've shared with you. I have prepared the image for us to put over here. I'm going to make it a bit bigger so that we can read it. To test for gas exchange, we can use what's known as hydrogen carbonate indicator. Okay? Hydrogen carbonate indicator is an orange solution that turns yellow in acid, in acidic solutions, and turns red in more alkaline solutions. Okay? So we can put hydrogen carbonate indicator, hydrogen carbonate indicator, and we can say that it is a orange solution, an orange solution that turns yellow in acidic conditions, turns yellow in acidic conditions, and red in alkali, or in less acidic conditions. So essentially it's an indicator that turns yellow when it's more acidic and turns red when it's less acidic. When carbon dioxide dissolves into water, it forms an acidic solution. So we can put that carbon dioxide dissolves in water to form acidic solutions. So if it turns yellow, carbon dioxide is present. So we can say over here, I'll add it so that it's here for our reference, if indicator turns yellow, CO2 is present. Okay, so let's have a look. We've got a control which just contains hydrogen carbonate indicator. We've put a bung on it and there has been no colour change. We've got a test tube that has been wrapped in aluminium foil. The leaf is inside, but instead of, and help if I don't draw all over it, instead of having the clear glass, there is aluminium foil wrapped all around that test tube. Okay? So rather than light getting to that leaf, there is aluminium foil wrapped around it. It turns yellow. Okay? That is because there is carbon dioxide present. The solution turns yellow because the carbon dioxide is not being absorbed by the leaf. However, in test tube 2, where there is no aluminium foil, light can get to the leaf. So we've got light hitting the leaf. The leaf is then carrying out photosynthesis by absorbing the carbon dioxide in the test tube, and it turns red because there is no carbon dioxide for the hydrogen carbonate to absorb. Whereas in the aluminium foil one, no light is getting to the leaf, therefore the leaf is not absorbing any carbon dioxide, and therefore the solution is absorbing the carbon dioxide and turning yellow. So the control stays the same because there is no leaf, there is no anything in there to be doing anything. The aluminium foil prevents this leaf from carrying out photosynthesis, therefore the carbon dioxide levels remain the same in the test tube, and the hydrogen carbonate absorbs the carbon dioxide, making it yellow. Test tube 2 turns red. This is because the leaf is absorbing all of the carbon dioxide, and therefore there is none being absorbed by the hydrogen carbonate indicator, and it turns red. So, you should now be able to tell me the word and symbol equations for photosynthesis. You should be able to tell me the raw materials for photosynthesis and how they get into the leaf of the plant. And you should be able to explain how to carry out an experiment to show if a leaf contains starch and if they are carrying out gas exchange. In addition to the worksheets I've added in Google Classrooms, there is also these questions. These questions are optional. However, I would strongly suggest that you do them. I would like you to write out the question in your book before answering it, okay? I will most likely also put some worksheets in Google Classrooms for you to have a go at. However, if there are no worksheets, you definitely need to do these questions, okay? I'm yet to put the worksheet together as I record this video, so I don't know yet what you may or may not have to do. If all else fails, if there's no worksheets in Google Classrooms, please just have a go at these questions. So that concludes our first lesson on explaining photosynthesis in the B8 topic. Should you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me. Either put a comment in the bottom of Google Classrooms or send me an email directly. I hope you are all keeping well, and I will see you in the next lesson.